Thanks to the person who made this comment. First, let's make sure we're on the same page about Dakuon and Bidakuon. Then let's talk about why this kana here is sometimes read as ga and sometimes read as nga. Welcome back to another video. If you don't already know me, I am Sachi. I am a Japanese teacher and translator. I have 2 online courses, Japanese Phonetics 101 and Japanese for Flight Attendants. Check out the description below for free resources and more information if you're curious. 皆さんこんにちは。心コミュニケーションズのサチです。今回は濁音と微濁音についてお話ししましょう。First things first, what are Dakuon and Bidakuon? Dakuon are voiced sounds, which means we use our vocal cords when we pronounce them. Bidakuon are also voiced sounds, but they are velar nasal sounds. If you're not exactly sure what that means, don't worry, we will practice and look into examples together in just a moment. Both Dakuon and Bidakuon are marked with a tenten on either the hiragana or katakana character that they're connected to. You may notice that in certain dictionaries, Bidakuon is marked with a maru, just like this. Let's use hiragana to illustrate Dakuon and Bidakuon. The ka, sa, ta, and ha rows all include voiceless consonants. A voiceless consonant is one in which we do not engage our vocal cords when we make the sounds. Let's try it together with ka, sa, and ta. Pronounce just the consonant sound for each kana and do so while gently touching your throat. The 3 consonant sounds we want are k, s, t. Try that while touching here and feel for the vibration. Let's try that together. K, s, t. You shouldn't feel any vibration at all. Next, let's try the same sounds but with their voiced equivalents. The voiced equivalent of a k sound is a g sound because the only difference between those two is whether we engage our vocal cords or not. The place and manner in which we make both of those sounds are exactly the same. So instead of the k, s, t sounds, let's use g, z, d. Let's try that together while touching our vocal cords gently. G, z, d. Can you feel your vocal cords vibrating? The voiceless and voiced consonant pairs are how we get most, but not all, of our Dakuon sounds. The ka, sa, ta, and ha rows are the original kana that have a Dakuon form. So, kakikuke-ko becomes gagigu-ge-go. Sashi-su-se-so becomes zaji-zu-ze-zo. Tachi-tsu-te-to becomes daji-zu-de-do. And ha-hi-fu-he-ho becomes ba-bi-bu-be-bo. The voiced equivalent of a h sound or an h sound isn't actually a b sound, but that's just how it works in Japanese. Have you ever wondered why these kana are sometimes pronounced ga-gi-gu-ge-go and sometimes pronounced nga-gi-gu-ge-go? That's the difference between Dakuon and Bidakuon. Bidakuon, like we mentioned earlier, uses velar nasal sounds. The velar area is in the back of your throat, and nasal, of course, means through your nose. This only happens for ga-gi-gu-ge-go, in which they are actually pronounced nga-gi-gu-ge-go with an ng sound. We use the same sound in English in words like sing, king, ring, and thing. So how do we know when to use each sound? Here are the guidelines for when to use Bidakuon. 1. We don't use them when they're the first sound in a word. 2. We do use them when they're not the first sound in a word. 3. We do use them when they're the first sound in a non-first word in a compound. And 4. We don't use them for words borrowed into Japanese. But note that each of these rules does have exceptions. Some regions use Bidakuon more frequently than others, and Tohoku is a good example in which they are used more frequently. Younger people tend to use them less frequently than older people, and usage is slowly declining, but people in certain professions, like newscasters or radio show hosts, for example, are more likely to use them. Let's use the rules we just went over together to determine how best to pronounce the next 5 example words. Here's the first word. This kana is the first sound in the word, so we do not want to use the nga pronunciation. For this one, the correct pronunciation is gakko. Here's the next word. For this one, it's not the first sound in the word, so we do want to use the ni pronunciation. This word should be pronounced as kangi. Next, even though this sound isn't the first in the word, it is a borrowed word into Japanese from English, so we do not want to use the bidakuon sound. This word should be pronounced as hamburger. Fourth word. This might be one of the words I hear most frequently pronounced both as megane and megane. However, since the sound is not the first in the word, it should be megane. And last but not least, this has two sounds that we need to figure out how to pronounce correctly. Firstly, this one. Like the previous word, it's not the first sound, so it should be nga. Secondly, this sound. It's the first sound in the non-first word in the compound, so it should be pronounced as ngu. So this word should be pronounced as nangangutsu. I'd say the main takeaway for this topic is that even though there is considered to be a correct pronunciation, many younger people are not using them as frequently as older people. And no matter which pronunciation you hear or use, the meaning of the word does not change. That being said, if you do want to elevate your knowledge of Japanese or use it professionally, this is knowledge that is useful to have. So let's review the rules and guidelines for when to use the Bidakuon sounds nangi ngu ngengo one more time. Number 1, don't use them when they're the first sound in the word, but 2, do use them when they're not the first sound in a word. 3, do use them when they're the first sound in a non-first word in a compound. 4, don't use them for words borrowed into Japanese. But don't forget that, as always, there are exceptions to these rules. If you want to learn about how to level up your Japanese, check out the links in the description down below. Also, let me know if you have a different takeaway from this video, and feel free to leave a comment down below. I always love hearing from you. Before I do my usual Japanese sign-off, listen to how I pronounce this word and this word. Are you ready? では、最後までご視聴いただきありがとうございました。また次回お会いしましょう。